Hey guys, Chad here from Take It or Leave It Reviews, here to talk to you about a movie called Saloum. This movie premiered last week on Shudder as part of their 61 Days to Halloween event. I recently posted my review for Who Invited Them, the film that first premiered for this event. That's on my channel, you can check that out right now. But in the meantime, let's get into Saloum. So this film is set in 2003 and it follows three mercenaries that are extracting a drug lord out of Guinea-Bissau that are forced to hide in the mystical region of Saloum, Senegal. And while that's actually a very concise and accurate description of what this film is about, this movie goes into so many more things that I don't want to spoil, but just know it's not that simple with this film. In fact, this movie actually reminds me of a Tarantino film, and I'm not going to get into what that film is that I'm referencing, but if you see this movie Saloum, which I think you should, then you'll know exactly what Tarantino film I'm pointing to. And I guess the cat's out of the bag. Yeah, I recommend that you check out Saloum. And with that being said, let's get into some of the strengths of this movie. So first off, I actually think that this movie hinges on our three kind of main characters. The leader of the mercenary group is kind of our main protagonist, but these three mercenaries, they're the people we follow throughout this whole film. And if they're not interesting, engaging, entertaining, then this movie's boring. And luckily, I actually found these guys very entertaining, very interesting. I was very curious about like the dynamics of this group, their history, and I was just kind of entertained by their bickering and their just witty banter back and forth. And then at the end of the day, they did feel like a loyal group of mercenaries that were truly brothers at the end of the day. And that's actually something I really enjoyed about this story and this movie is it actually goes into kind of the legend of this mercenary group. People know about them and only know so much. People are scared of these guys. But at the same time, they're actually kind of like just a bunch of knuckleheads. And it was also cool that they each served a purpose. You know, you had the leader who's the smart, kind of small guy, but he's the real intellectual in the group. Then you got like the really big, strong bruiser of the group, and he's actually obsessed with his clothes and wearing Gucci and Versace, and he's a hoot. And then there's the third character. He's an older guy, and I guess I would call him the mystic of the group, which is kind of a weird thing to say, but like he always has this thing where he blows his powder in people's faces and it knocks him out. He's also like kind of the guy where if he like disappears, you're just like, dude, don't ask any questions. I don't know where he is. I don't know what he's doing. It probably needs to be done. I plausible deniability. So I'm glad he's doing it. He's much better at that stuff. But when all is said and done, I just enjoyed spending time with these characters and learning about them and seeing where they went throughout this story. And when these characters end up in Saloum and they find a camp to stay at for a few days, there is this kind of paranoia and nervousness about, are people coming for them? We got to be careful. And particularly in the second act, it evolves into this kind of whodunit mystery, suspense, thriller story of, who's at the camp already, who's coming after them, can we trust them? And I was, at the edge of my seat, and I was definitely engaged during this. And not only during the camp scene, but I mean, frankly, the whole movie, it's filmed on location everywhere, and it is gorgeous. And while the cinematography is captivating, I gotta say that the musical score was actually the first thing I really noticed within the first couple minutes of the movie, especially during the opening scene. And it continued to impress throughout the film. And speaking of the opening scene, it really kind of knocked me back like immediately. It's very like otherworldly and beautiful and kind of disturbing all at the same time. And I really didn't understand what it was getting after in terms of the context of the film. But what I really like is that it actually ties in with our main character in a big way. And I think that's one thing I really liked about this is that our main character, Chaka, this ended up being a very personal and intimate story in relation to him, and that kind of came out of nowhere and was a really pleasant surprise. That all being said, I do have a few negatives to point out. The first of which is that we did spend a lot of time kind of on this camp, just kind of hanging around. At a point, we're literally just with these characters doing chores. I was kind of like, all right, guys, tick tock, let's pick up the pace here. When does the horror stuff happen? Not that that's the most important thing, the horror element. I was genuinely confused. I was like, is this a horror movie? Turns out, at a point in time, kicks up to 11, it's definitely a horror movie. It just took what felt to be a long time, I mean half of the movie, to get to that point. But when the horror does kick in, it kicks in out of nowhere. It's very abrupt, it's very intense, and I like that. It reminds me of movies like Kill List. Love that movie. I enjoyed that, but what follows is an expository dialogue scene that felt like it went on for like 10 minutes that just catches us up on what's going on. It was just a flurry of information going back and forth, and I was just trying to catch up. The characters seemed to have a preconceived notion or understanding of this mythology, so they were like, yeah, gotcha, I understand what's going on, and I'm like, I don't understand. I have no idea what's going on, but we're leaving? Break? We're going? Okay, all right. Let's go. So it left me there kind of confused and just kind of holding on for dear life as we just went forward, hoping that I would figure out what all this is and put it together as we went along. And I'll keep it vague to avoid spoilers, but when the crew does get going, they do run into some, if you will, horror bad guys. And these horror bad guys were very bizarre to look at. Like, not just like, wow, that's weird. I mean, I literally was like, what is that? What the hell am I looking at? It's not even that it looks bad necessarily, I'm just saying I'm looking at it, my brain's processing it, and I'm getting back cannot compute. So to sum it up, guys, I thought that this was an interesting odyssey with very compelling, entertaining, and interesting protagonists. The second act was on the one hand very mysterious and suspenseful and thrilling with that whole whodunit vibe, but it dragged a little bit for me. In the third act, I was lost for a lot of it, but I was entertained, and I like where it went at the end of the day, that it was a very personal and intimate story for Chaka. And if all that sounds interesting to you, I'm going to recommend that you check this movie out on Shudder, and I'm going to give Saloum a 6.8 out of 10. But those are just my thoughts, take it or leave it. What do you guys think? Are you interested in this movie? Have you seen it already? What did you think about it? Let me know down in the comment section. And if you have seen this movie, I would recommend that you check out Kill List. That movie's amazing. And the next film that I'll be reviewing for Shudder 61 Days of Halloween is a movie called Flux Gourmet. Keep an eye out for that review coming up, and in the meantime, I'm Chad from Take It or Leave It, and I'll check you later.
Check you later. Check you later. Hey, man, get off my case. Oh, man. Chicks don't want to hear that shit.